Hello, everybody. It's Marcy from wavesofcommunication.com. Welcome to another episode of my Language Facilitation Helpline podcast. The information in this show is designed to equip and empower parents to take action today. The strategies and advice provided here are general and not intended to replace personalized consultation. If you want individual coaching and advice, you should visit wavesofcommunication.com to learn how to work with me as a client. Most importantly, never give away your power as your child's language facilitator to any therapist, teacher, consultant, or even to a specific method or strategy. Evolve with the language facilitation process and always honor your unique family's abilities and your own core values before you consciously initiate any action with your child. And now on to the show. Hey everybody, today I am here with Jean, who is a mom who's been following my platform for a little while. How long have you been following me, Jean?
I would say probably about 3 weeks to a month.
Okay, so what I'd like you to start with is telling us a little bit about how you first came to know that your child was late talking and what you've done so far before you found Waves of Communication.
So we first really started thinking about our son being a late talker when we took him to his pediatrician for his 18-month checkup. And they asked all the usual questions about his milestones and his development and his speech. And at that time, he was still just really babbling a lot. And so he had recommended kind of an early intervention. It's I don't want to say their name, but it's a clinic for toddlers between 18 months to 3 years, and it's for toddlers who are diagnosed with all sorts of different types of things.
Okay,
and
so
some kids
was this a county program where they were, they sent you for this free evaluation through the early intervention program?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's very typical for families in the U.S. because we have these free services for evaluations for kids under 3, and everywhere around the country it works kind of different. And where you are, this particular agency, usually it's an agency that does all kinds of evaluation and therapy because they're charged with finding out if there's really a significant delay at this stage. So you went ahead and had one of those evaluations?
We did, and they didn't find anything necessarily developmentally lacking besides his speech. And so they just suggested maybe a speech therapist once a week. They suggested an occupational therapist once a week, and I think that was kind of to help him learn to sit and manage activities for longer periods of time.
Okay.
And then also 2 days a week, there was kind of like a small class. There were 3 of us. The parents attended, and then we had our teacher, and we did music time, gym time, snack time, playtime.
Okay, so you did those activities with him at the school. You were helping him do those things? Great. And then was there education? Were they teaching you how to do those strategies to use them at home?
So his therapist would come to our home once a week.
Okay.
And the occupational therapist we saw at his school. And at school, it was more kind of just playing or getting him to sit in his chair for this activity, or he has to sit for this activity.
So the occupational therapist was not climbing, running around. It was about sitting to do like fine motor kinds of activities.
But we would do maybe 30 minutes out of the hour and a half of running and playing. And then the rest was sitting, listening to story, doing music, and snack time.
Okay. All right. So how long did you do that series of therapy, coming to the house, and the little early intervention school stuff?
We ended up about a year.
Okay. All right.
So we tried to stick with it.
Okay, well, sure, for sure. All right, so you did that for about a year, and how
Mhm.
did his developmental skills evolve? Did it work? Did he learn some things from this situation?
So it ended up just making him completely like I don't he doesn't want to learn anymore. He doesn't want
Um,
anything to do with um his therapy was so involved with if you do this, I will give you this. And it was very
okay.
much like holding it out in front of him. And if you don't do this, if you don't do this sign, I'm not going to give you this. And I was told by his therapist that the frustration, we need to get him frustrated because that's going to be the motivation to make him start doing these signs. Because it wasn't
Wow.
about speech, it was about signs.
I
Everything. So pictures and signs.
I see. So they weren't working on talking. Even the speech therapists, they were working on nonverbal things. So tell me, what were the goals? What were they asking him to do?
Um, One thing we worked on for months, she would come for about 45 minutes once a week, and we would just sit there and do ready, set, go, and try to make him point on go. So she would hold a car in front of him and just say ready, set, and try and get him to do the go. And we would just do that over and over. And he
Wow.
at first kind of thought it was funny in like a
Yeah.
game, like, okay, and kind of laughed and played with it. But about the third week, he just would run away when she came.
Oh,
And then it got
wow.
to the point, yeah, we always have had a really good play relationship. But then it got to a point where he didn't really necessarily want to play with his parents, us anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's tough. And when you obviously, I mean, you did this for a year. So let's
Mhm.
say 6 months in, you already had to start to notice some of this resistive behavior
Mhm.
from your son. What did you do? How were the therapists responding? Was he resisting them as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I knew. I mean, from after the first few weeks, I knew he did not like it, and
Mm,
I kept trying to vocalize my concerns and tell them, he's avoiding this. He doesn't want to do this. There's a reason he's not doing the signs. He's not. He will mimic silly things we do, like
yeah.
shushing, or he
Yeah.
even pretends to snore. But
Oh,
the
so he
yeah,
was. So yeah, let's talk about that. So I mean, so when you told them that, let's talk about first. Sorry,
sorry.
I know because I really want to get into talking about his talking, but I do want to try to understand how it does get stuck in this process where obviously it wasn't quite a match with how your child was learning, and when you talk to the clinicians about his dissatisfaction or not liking the intervention, what did they tell you?
We just got to keep doing it. We've got to be more aggressive. We just got to
Oh,
keep going.
so they wanted to double down. Instead of
Mhm.
honoring your son's feelings, they
Mhm.
just ignored them and
Mhm.
doubled down on their method. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it can happen. I mean, there's ranges of therapists who have real passion about their method. Now, was this school based on applied behavior analysis foundations?
Um, from they, it's a very general school, and they
Okay.
don't necessarily label themselves as a certain ABA program or a certain particular program. But from what I know from friends who have gone through different programs with their children, this is very ABA-esque.
Yeah, it sounds very ABA. That's why I asked, because when you describe activities being based on an exchange, that's the foundation of applied
Mhm.
behavior analysis. And
Mhm.
for those of you who don't understand what that means, exchange based means they search for rewards or reinforcements. They call positive reinforcemements that they will give a child when they do an activity. But what they're not realizing is that frustration that you realized that they were
Mhm.
creating by not giving in not giving the child the thing that they desire is actually causing some significant resistance to any of the other learning that they were trying to do. And that's when you can see that the therapist is not resonating. When I talk about the language facilitation zone, anyone who's not thinking about the same thing the child is thinking about, they're gonna be disappointed because the child is certainly focused on something else. And if you want something to happen and the child is focused on something else, you're going to be disappointed. And so that's, therapists don't like to be disappointed. They like to collect data. So they might just collect data about how they were disappointed.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you for explaining that. Let's talk a little bit about your little guy. Instead of the history, how long ago did you stop this?
We stopped this probably, I would say about a month and a half ago.
Okay.
I think
So
the
even
Zoom
during
meeting,
the pandemic, they were open, this school and the therapies.
we were doing 4 Zoom meetings a week, and then
Oh,
I cut it to 3, and then finally it was the last straw. I was stuck so much on there's nothing else to do. There's no other path. There's no other outlet. So this has to be the only one. I have to stay on it. But then
yeah.
it got to a point where finally I didn't care if there was no path. We just couldn't be on that one anymore.
Okay. Wow. I am really sorry that happened to you. And what I tell parents who, I meet, because I meet a lot of parents who have been down this journey, and what I tell them is just kind of like, that's how life goes for a lot of people. And sometimes, just like it happened for me in my professional speech pathology career, it has to get so bad that you just leave. Even if you don't know what else there is, you figure at least you could do better than this. And, you learn that negative input is something you want to start to avoid. All right. So when you left school, what did you do? What did you decide to change? What was your first course of action when you left school?
The first was just to stop for a second, just to get kind of all of that out of our house, like all that pressure, all of that expectation, and just play, just have fun, and just do what we do. Because, like I said, I noticed when we're playing and we're interacting, he will mimic the things that we do, unlike what he did with his teacher. So we started doing that. And then after a few weeks, I was like, okay, even if we're not going to do speech therapy, I know we have to have some kind of a structure. So let's see what I can find. And at first it was more just kind of not like a teaching plan, but maybe like more guided activities or just anything. And then I kind of stumbled upon you, Marcy, and started reading, and so much of what you were saying was parallel to our experience and so similar. You described our son almost to a T in some of the things you were saying. So I started watching videos and got my husband involved. And so, yeah, here we are trying some of your strategies and seeing awesome results already.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. So let's talk about what you have improved. Let's talk about behavior first, because you had spoken about you were in this OT to help him sit and focus and listen and learn from you better. When you gave up sort of the high pressure tactics and moved more into fun play, how has his behavior changed?
His behavior's changed incredibly. He doesn't feel like the pressure, like, oh, I got to sit in this chair, and once I get in this chair, I'm not going to get out. Like, he knows, okay, if you're done, if you don't want to do this anymore, we can find something else. Let's talk about it. Let's do what you want to do. And the tantrums are 50%.
That's amazing. Congratulations about that. That must make your household feel a lot better. How often
Oh my
was he having tantrums before during the ABA time?
Oh my
Or the
God.
school time?
Oh geez. I some days up to 10.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So that's a lot. And now how
Yep.
about how often now?
We have a couple of meltdowns a day, maybe three,
All
and
right.
that's just from a toddler not agreeing with what parents are saying.
Right. Okay. And I get it. And tell us again, how old is your little guy?
He's 2.5.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
So we're talking about a young late talker who was in the early intervention for a little while. And he was, I think obviously nobody likes to be restricted or restrained or be frustrated, have things withheld from them. And when you stop doing those things, you got a lot more engagement. And that makes a lot of sense for those tantrums to go. But we still see some tantrums happening. And I suspect that they're due to late talking because kids who persist with tantrums, even though they know how to communicate other things, they fall short. Their language, whatever they have, falls short. So let's talk about his communication. You had said that he was mimicking things. What kinds of things has he learned to mimic and do and imitate that he's learned on his own, either verbally or non-verbally from you?
Um, so without the therapist, because there are
Right.
two, he's got two languages really. Um,
Okay.
the first with us, so we'll put his babies to sleep, and when they sleep, they'll snore, shoo, and so he snores with his babies while they sleep. Um,
Okay.
he can't physically do the snapping, but he will put his fingers together and do the motions. Um,
Ah,
he
that's
waves. Yeah. He shushes. Um, just
okay. So he is doing some behaviors that are sort of modeling, what a language would be, a little bit more sophisticated. I call those kinds of things pantomime behaviors, where he is definitely communicating a message to you, like it's time to be quiet, the babies are sleeping, and he might do some with his body and some with his sounds, which is wonderful news because some late talkers, they don't start talking very much and they just really focus on their body and they're not doing much with their mouth. But I remember you saying even back at 18 months, he was babbling quite a bit. So,
yeah,
and then he was making a lot of noises, and he's always done a lot of making noises with his mouth, hasn't he, ever since?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It just was therapy was working on signs and pictures and not imitating saying words because
yeah,
he wasn't sitting to do flashcards or any of those kinds of activities yet. So
yeah,
they were working on the nonverbal imitation, like pointing to pictures and handing a picture or doing a sign, right?
yes,
Okay, so at home, when he wants something, so those nice little demonstration
mhm,
kind of, language that you said he's doing, that's one way to sort of have conversation with you. He's trying to say, let's play babies, or let's tell the story about the babies, or, he's trying to tell you what to do. You come here, you be quiet, or you sing more, you get my stuff, kind of thing. So that's where that kind of description language is. So I suspect when he wants something, he's doing a lot of direction to ask you, like telling you to go
mhm.
get things non-verbally. Is that how it works for requesting right
Uh,
now?
yeah, he's uh, grabbing our hands, pulling us to the area and pointing, or he'll ask to be picked up and then direct our shoulders in which way we need to start walking towards. Sometimes he'll spin me all the way around by my shoulders just to get where he needs to
Wow,
go.
he's like trying to be like a what do they call those transformer guys and get
Yeah,
inside of you and literally control your body to
yeah,
get you to go there and reach the thing he wants. That's funny. It's amazing. I love to hear the different ways these late talkers start to get more sophisticated in their language. And what that tells me, Jean, is that he has, and you have, such a good intuitive connection with him that he knows he can get literally into you, like, and make you do and help him reach the things, get the things, accomplish the things, open stuff, find stuff, whatever that he can't do on his own because he's a little short guy. And, at 2.5, that's pretty smart stuff. That's a pretty high level of intelligence, because if you've seen my independent study or my read my book, any of those things, I always talk about how these kids, they elevate their nonverbal communication. They just decide to focus their energy on making that more sophisticated. Now, in the survey that you completed, I also saw that one of the reasons that you're suspecting that your little guy is late talking is that maybe you've been anticipating his needs a little bit. Sort of using that intuition, that intuitive connection you obviously have with him to guess what he wants when in times that he's not able to tell you. Has that been true?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, we're to the point where about 90% of the time I know exactly what he wants. But it's just that he's getting so specific now that it's hard to really pinpoint it. And that was a big thing in therapy, is that I was too intuitive. So that's why he just relies on me too much. And
yeah. And that is a blockage. That is definitely a blockage to spoken language. Because again, and that's why I believe your therapists went to really push hard the other direction. Now, I hate to talk bad about therapists, and I'm never going to talk bad about therapists, because honestly, they are just using the information that they have been taught in school and the methods that they are coming from. They all love kids. They all want to help families. They just don't understand the difference between that intuitive communication that parents and kids have, because they're not professionally used to using it. That's why I call myself an intuitive speech pathologist. And the best speech pathologists, I believe, out there working right now are the ones who are intuitive, because they know when to stop doing ready, set, go when a child gives up on that activity after 45 minutes. And they intuitively know not to waste their time with a family doing something that either the family or the child is literally running away from. But when, like I said, you just don't know where that therapist's mindset was. Now that you are understanding where your mindset is, you have to know that there are mistakes that you're making too, just like that therapist made in pressuring him to talk. On your end, the way other end of the spectrum, you're enabling your late talker to rely on you to literally read his mind. And because you can't do that, he's getting more specific in his nonverbal communication, and you're getting better at reading that because he's training you. You see, with that nonverbal communication. That's why you're getting so good. 90% knowing what he wants nonverbally. That's a lot of big habits that you've created for yourself and your family. Now, it is what it is. Now, what I tell parents now is understanding, yes, the pressure was blocking progress. And yes, the intuitive over guessing, over understanding, in your head understanding is also blocking the process. Your job is to find somewhere in the middle, because yes, he has to be motivated, maybe not by frustration, but he does have to be motivated to try to do this talking on his own, and motivated to not rely on you. He has to be motivated to be a big boy and grow into owning his own need to shift away from nonverbal communication into speech, because he came into the world with nonverbal communication and he's chosen clearly his developmental path with it. So the first step with any language facilitation journey is understanding where the blockages are. So, and you can't be all one way or the other. It has to be balanced in the middle. I always talk about this balance. So, for your case, understanding where you tend to go is that guessing mechanism. You have to shift more into motivating him to try to do these things on his own. Now, with behavior, you've already made that shift because you took away the pressure from making him do what you need to do right now for learning and opened the door a little bit for him to explore, and you're following him. Now, the problem is you opened the door and you went way down that path, and now you're waiting for him to show you everything. And you're on the back foot, being the interpreter all the time because he hasn't stopped communicating with you. If he needs something, he comes. But he's still kind of resistant to teaching because he has those bad experiences from before. So whenever you try to bring in some teaching, he knows he can't immediately leave it and go. And that's where his reliance to get you to guess will overtake his motivation to try to say these words on his own. Do you understand how his mindset is blocked now? Because he's so anti-teaching after those experiences that he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And he's pressuring you to be better at reading his mind, especially now that you've stopped for a month or so. So, yeah. So it can be that other way, but it is definitely time for you, Jean, to get back in what I call the driver's seat of your language facilitation, where you're understanding that the hurdle here is not that your boy can't talk, not that he can't listen, not that he can't learn, but that right now he's kind of resistant to all of that, and he's not really in the mood unless he's having a super good time. So the fun times that you're using the language facilitation talk during following, does he like to play with trains? What does he like? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what are the things that he gravitates to when you let him on his own?
At home, it's definitely his action figures and his cars and train tracks.
Beautiful.
And every time we go out, it's dogs. If we see a dog.
Great. So all of those are super good, and you've got a mover anyway. So what we know about what your child loves is all of those things involve a little bit of movement. Trains move on the track. He's moving outside. He's seeing dogs moving, all of that stuff. So during those times right now will be the best, that as long as he's willing to listen to you, parallel play, but just really avoid any directions or questions, especially during those periods of time, because that's when parents really want to ask kids questions. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, what color is that train? Oh, where are the trains going? Or what are they doing? Like, you want to naturally ask those questions first. But remember, your little guy is a late talker and he hasn't heard the answers to those questions yet. So it's going to be very, very important right now for you to provide a ton of language models using language facilitation talk like you learned in the book, the right words, the right way at the right time. Now, he doesn't have any problems with processing, but it still needs to be slower than average. So you make sure that he is listening and really pay attention to the zone, because if he is not listening, if he's like not enjoying your commentary about it, he will shut you off like the radio and turn the channel on you and take his zone and move it elsewhere. So it's very, very important during these times. No questions, no directions, but you do parallel play. So you get your own train and you talk about where your train is going. My train is going under the bridge. Instead of asking the question, you're providing the answers. So later on, after he gets language, you can use questions as a way to banter and have conversation, but don't start with them. Get those questions out of your mind and provide him language models until those words start popping out on their own. So no questions until he starts using those phrases on his own, okay? Because even when they start saying single words and the
Mhm.
little stuff starts to pop out, parents will want to go. I've got a parent like that in my program right now, has got some amazing description language from all this pretend play. And now he's doing a bunch of it, but he's not expanding beyond descriptions because all they've done is, this is the red train and it's my red train and it's the beautiful red train that is mine that's going under the bridge and whatever, but it's still very descriptive. It's not, what do you think about? What do I think about? It's about me, my ideas in my head that are getting out. It's not social yet, okay?
Okay. Mhm.
That's the stages that it goes through. With your little guy, considering he really doesn't have any developmental reason to be late talking, he was just a late talker. And then the process got pushed back a little more because the training was too intensive. He's just set back a little bit. But I promise, when you start providing language models he wants to hear that are not questions or prompts, that those words are going to start popping out. Are you hearing any words pop out yet?
I hear words when it's very nonchalant.
Yes.
So his dad was walking, we were at the park, and his dad walked past him and he said, "Hey, buddy." And we just got a simple, "Hey."
Nice.
Or we were, his dad and I were looking over some papers, and he went up his step stool and said, "Up," and pointed up.
Nice.
And we looked
Perfect.
at the, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. That's his language, Gene. That's his language popping out. Amazing. And like I said, those pop out words, they're going to come out first. And you know those are his, and they're never going to be when you expect them, because
yeah,
that's how language goes. Because if you're
yeah,
expecting it, then you've prompted it, you know?
yeah.
So when you think about it, your whole change from not prompting at all
Mhm.
just now is going to need to shift into providing these language models. And if you're hearing words pop out, that means that you're already doing it right, that you're already seeing that that blockage is starting to come down for
Yeah.
him to be relying on you. Now, here's the next thing that you're probably going to contend with. He's going to want to be better at talking than he is. Okay.
Yes.
He's going to want to be able to say long sentences about why and how, and he doesn't want that, he wants this, and you've made him upset, and how come it can't happen today, it happened next week. I mean, the older he gets, the more complex these ideas are going to be, and already they're more complex than the language he has, right? He's
Mhm.
telling stories about babies going night-night, and
Yeah.
all he knows is shh and this gesture. That's all he knows. So he wants to tell the whole story. So story time for your family is going to be key with these babies, with the action figures, with the trains, not just the play by play. The train is going under the bridge. Look at my train's going under the bridge. But the why and the how. Uh-oh, it's stuck. I have to move these tracks. It can't get through this space. And woohoo, I did it. We finished. You know, think about children's television shows, that the ones that they love, that they get to know the characters because they know the bad guys are the ones that cause trouble and the good guys are the ones that solve those problems, right? You have to find those characters from the things that those archetypes, those personalities that they're going to see in the world.
Mhm.
You find those personalities. That's why Thomas the Train and Mickey Mouse Club and Peppa Pig and all these shows, they have all these different characters. And when it's just you and your husband and your son, he's making up these characters that he remembers from videos he's watched or other things like that. So telling stories instead of just, Iron Man is flying, but like Iron Man needs to go to far away places. So now Iron Man has to fly, right? Like, why does he have to go? And that's the language that your boy wants to know.
Okay.
So you could see some more frustration behavior come, because remember, you're really good and intuitive at understanding his frustration, but knowing what that behavior is going to be key for you to understand. Why is he frustrated? Is he frustrated because he doesn't know the words to say and you're not understanding his complex story? Or is he just frustrated because he wants something that you can't give him? Like, he wants a cookie and there's no cookies in the house. Understanding the why behind every time he is feeling a certain way, happy or sad. That's the language that you can't neglect to model here in the process, because this wonderful, the car is going under the bridge and it's, all this stuff is going to sound amazing to you till you realize, wait a minute, it's still pretty limited. All he is just describing what he sees. It's not really conversation and social. It's just language learning, which has to happen first, but it's an easy way to get stuck. So that's why I wanted to make sure I went into that explanation for you. Because with the little guys, they don't have the language that older kids, older late talkers, if they're older than 5 or 6 or 7, they have heard the answers to these questions, many of them. That's why parents ask them questions and they can teach them the answers, to memorize the answers. You don't want your little guy to memorize Q&A. You want him to use the language himself. So he has to see you using it yourself and your husband and together with each other. Because remember, he's not just listening when you're there sitting. He's listening when you and your husband are talking in the other room. He's listening to the television. He's listening to kids at school. He's listening to people at the playground. Everywhere he goes, he's listening to humans talking. Now that you've taught him that it's important, and he's going to see some that he wants to be like, and he's not going to be as good, and he's going to be sad about that, So
Yeah.
whenever he tries anything, if it's a squeak, if it's a shush, if it's a up, if it's a whatever, you make a big deal about him being a big boy and trying to talk on his own, and how much you love his words and how you can't wait till he can tell you stories. But remind him, and this is the other thing I remind every parent, go ahead and tell him flat out, I know that you want to talk better than you can right now. And I know that you didn't like that therapy, but mommy is trying. Mommy wants to help you, right? Make sure you tell your child that you are invested in helping them develop these skills. And you're not just going to try to do some random thing because you read it in a book, but you're learning the right way, the way he wants to learn, the words he wants to say. And tell him that you want to teach him that.
Okay. That was going to be my question.
Yeah. Yeah.
What to
So,
do.
yeah, tell me more. What kind of questions have you been, now that you've heard me talking, where are you now? What are you finding yourself getting stuck with?
I think the biggest thing I was stuck with was what to do when he was starting to babble. Because we can play with things, and I wasn't sure if I should use like my intuition and try and repeat the word that I think he's trying to say, or if that's putting pressure on him to say, no, say it like this.
That's a great question. That is a great question. So think about, whenever I have a parent who's like in a play situation or a functional situation and they don't really know what to say, like they're not sure what to say. That means that you're not putting yourself in your child's perspective. So what I do is I do a lot of aha. I think you want this now. So because you can assume that stuff, which is really what you're doing anyway, is assuming that he wants to play, and you are really making that assumption by this very sophisticated nonverbal behavior he's using. So what I do is I tell parents to very carefully say a sentence whenever your child comes to you or is trying to tell you something. It means a sentence. And if you're not sure exactly what that sentence is, then you do what a talker would do. And you say, I think you are telling me that you want to watch a video, because he's standing there holding the phone going like this, because that's
Mhm.
exactly what he's telling you, right? He's handing you the phone and you're like, I think you are telling me that you want to watch a video. And just by saying that sentence out loud, you're going to get better looking and listening, because he's going to agree with you. And we always look at someone when they agree with us. If you're sitting in a conversation with your husband and he's like, wow, that was a great dinner, you're like, yeah, it was. It was a great dinner. And if you disagree with that person, that's the other reason that you'll look at them. Oh, I don't think so. I wasn't good for me, right? But when someone gives an opinion about something that is, or you're on the same wavelength, then you're always tuned in together. So here's how it looks when you're doing something that he's just kind of drifting about and, whatever, and you're not sure what to say. Then you're like, wow, you are bored. It looks like you are bored. Or he walks into the kitchen. You must be hungry, because that's what you're assuming. So instead of just assuming it in your head, say it out loud, because you're guessing something. And if you
Mhm.
guess right, he's going to look at you and listen. If you get wrong, he's going to correct you. Because
Okay.
if he walks in the kitchen and you say, you look like you're ready to go to bed, he's going to go, no, 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 no. Right? Because he understands you. He just doesn't know how to use the words. If he walks in the kitchen and you say, and smell, and you're cooking dinner, and I'll bet you are smelling mommy's cooking and you are hungry. Here you are in the kitchen telling me that you are hungry. And I use the word telling, even though your child is technically showing you,
Yeah.
but that's his language, because he's saying it. He is telling it. He doesn't know words to say, yeah, I'm hungry, when's dinner gonna be done, and that's what he's saying. So you'd be like, you're here in the kitchen, you must be hungry. I'll bet you want to know, how soon is dinner? Well, dinner is in 10 minutes. So now you can help me cook dinner, or you can sit here and watch me, or, whatever. Because whenever he's coming to you, and I saw in your survey that he's interested in doing little chores and jobs around your house. Does he like to do that?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Those are my favorite times to teach kids language, because you put on what I call the mommy show. So while you're doing laundry and you talk about yourself, look at me. I have to put only 1/2 cup of soap. I have to pour carefully. I have to measure carefully. Now I'm going to pour it in. But first, I have to turn the water on. Water on cold. I'm going to turn water on cold. Now I got to pour the soap in. All that language, right? Instead of, you sit here while mommy does laundry, and then you go do it, and he's watching, 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 watching. All those times are language facilitation opportunities where you can provide him with the models for the language that he wants to learn, because he does want to tell you how it's going on and what you're doing. And if he's watching you while you're doing that thing, then you're in the same zone. Right? If he's pointing to
Yeah.
something and you talk about that something, you're in the same zone. If he's looking at you and you're doing that, you're in the same zone. And that's what you want. And none of these language models, you realize this, have any expectation tied to them. There's no, I expect you to imitate me. I expect you to say, I expect you to mimic. No expectation with these models. It just has to be everyday talking. So.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's how you're going to figure it out. And if there's ever a time that he comes up like short, like he wants to tell you something and you're not understanding, just tell him you don't understand him and that you want to understand him and that you know he's trying to talk to you, but you just don't know what it is. And don't tell him to try again. Just say you don't know, because when you say you don't know, he will try harder. If he
Okay.
cares, if he cares about you understanding that message, and he knows that you care about understanding it, because that's what you got to tell him flat out. I want to know what you're trying to say, but this crying, this tears, this pointing, I don't understand. I don't understand what that means. And don't tell him you have to show me. Just say I don't
Okay.
understand. Just say I
Okay.
don't understand, because he'll try harder. And if he's just sad, then you say, oh, okay. And if he needs a suggestion, when you calm down again, just say, can you show me? Can you show me? Just show me what you want. Just remind him that he can still show you, that is still okay. Because remember, with late talking, we use the nonverbal communication. We don't stop it. We use it to understand what it means and provide the language for that. And that's how kids shift from nonverbal communication into language. And that's your goal.
Thank you
Good
so
for you.
much, Marcy. Thank you. From me to so many other moms I know, you've helped out more than I think you even probably know.
Thanks for listening in today. Please share this podcast episode with anybody you think can benefit. And remember, there are tons of resources across my Waves of Communication platform to help you get started today on your language facilitation journey. There's more than 200 free videos on YouTube, a daily blog in my group on Facebook, my book, If It Isn't Fun, It Isn't Fun. Teach Your Child to Talk Faster Than Speech Therapy is available on Amazon and Audible, and my coaching programs. And all the details are on my website at wavesofcommunication.com. Of course, I'll be back next week with more information and strategies to help you continue on your language facilitation journey. Bye for now.